16 to 9, 3AW and summer nights, and speaking with Melanie Macfarlane, who is a migration and international student expert at a time when we are sadly lacking in international students in this country. And thank you for making your time available. Melanie, lovely to speak to you.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Great to be on the show.
Well, it is interesting. I'm just reading your bio here. 17 years of experience, immigration educational consultant, working in the space of international education and student visas. Well, if you just started this year, you'd be having a very poor year in the world of international visas and all the rest of it.
I know, you've got to laugh, otherwise you'd cry.
Yes, I know.
Yes, I'm glad I started a long time ago, that's for sure.
The numbers are down enormously. In fact, have they virtually stopped? Or what is the actual situation in Australia with international students coming in this year, so for the last few months?
Well, the fact is, the numbers, as soon as the borders closed last year, that was it. There were no more international students who came in.
Absolutely none have come in, is that right?
Absolutely none have come in, except for the 63 who came through the quarantine at Howard Springs in Darwin in November last year. Okay. And they went through, and they're now safely studying at Charles Darwin University. So
that's 63 compared to how many should have arrived last year?
Well, I mean, it's a $40 billion industry. So, you're looking at thousands. Yes. Hundreds of thousands of students normally coming in each year, and that number was set to grow exponentially last year. So it's been hugely detrimental to the industry. If you think that a student is worth around $100,000 per annum in the sense of what they pay to the university, what they pay out in accommodation fees and all of these types of things, and also in the tourism that they normally generate, actually, because they often bring their family too to the country. So they're enormously valuable.
And they buy coffees and eat meals and all the rest of it and contribute to the economy as well that way.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
They mostly are coming from Asia. What are the percentages of where the international students have been coming to Australia from?
Well, I mean, it's no great surprise, I suppose, that, a large percentage, more than about 50% probably at least, would come from China. You've got then another 20% from India. You've then got the rest coming from places like Latin America, which I'm very well versed in. That's where we have offices, actually, and we normally bring students from there. Other countries in Asia, and then, of course, Europe, too.
Interesting from China. You just wonder, even if there hadn't been all the COVID restrictions, with China getting a little aggressive about certain matters in the last few months, you just wonder if they might have stopped that flow anyway.
You do wonder that, but it hasn't happened so far, and certainly Chinese students haven't reacted in the way that I think perhaps the Chinese government might have wanted, in the sense that they haven't been put off by the rumours that there was so much racism and so on in Australia. They've certainly shown a keen interest in returning, and a lot of them are still studying online overseas, or they started studying online overseas in order to then come back here and resume their studies whenever that will be.
How many would be doing that? Would it be tens of thousands who are studying that way, online?
Yes, there would be tens of thousands who are doing that at this stage. So even if at this stage, talking about quarantine, even if you had, let's say, 1,000 students coming back every week at this point, you still wouldn't, by the end of the year, without any further pilot programs, you wouldn't be able to bring in new students. You'd only be able to bring in the existing students who either left and couldn't get back because they were already studying, or they've commenced their studies online since the borders have closed.
Do you think these international students, will go elsewhere now? Are there other countries that would accept them at the moment, or is it a worldwide problem?
Well, Andrew, that's a very good question. I was just reading an article today about Canada, and I've been talking a lot about this. We ourselves have been sending students to Canada from Latin America because they opened their borders to international students in October. And it's a very different rhetoric that the government over there is using with regards to international students, including setting up even a new immigration policy in the last few days to welcome international students to actually remain there in Canada. They also announced in their budgets last year what exact numbers they intended to bring in terms of international students. The UK has also been very similar Australia has not been seen as so welcoming, actually.
Interesting. So obviously I get the impression, Melanie, that you're on the side of, or you lean towards letting them back in sooner than later. So what are the sort of models and solutions that, allowing for COVID to enable them to study in this country this year, say?
Yes, well, yes. I mean, of course, clearly I'm biased because, it's the industry that I'm in, but I also see the enormous benefits that international students bring to Australia, and it's very sad not to have them here. But the models really are the quarantine models, and I think what the issue is at the moment is that the government is not accepting anything other than quarantine within the hotels. And perhaps not even trusting that model so much at this stage. But really what we need to see is the accommodation that is provided by universities and also by accommodation providers for students in general. We need to see a model whereby they can safely house students for the 14 days that is required to be able to bring them into all of the different states. I mean, the Northern Territory has done it extremely well because they have Howard Springs, which is a facility that lends itself naturally to be a great quarantine station for the 14 days. But what needs to happen, and a lot of these accommodation providers have spent months and months putting together models and presenting them to the government, but the government, I think, has just not had the confidence to
the will to do it, perhaps, at the moment, yes.
And the will,
yeah. Where could you suggest, for example, in Melbourne, where they could be housed? Like if 10 or 15,000 international students came here in the next few months, where would they be housed, apart from hotels? Well, they wouldn't fit in all the hotels, probably. But where would they go? What have you got an idea?
Well, university campuses, Monash University, for example, University of Melbourne, they have accommodation that lends itself naturally on site to be part of a quarantine scheme or model. Also, there's other student accommodation providers such as Unilodge and so on that have also offered their services to be able to provide that type of quarantine model. So those are just some examples. And I know University of Australia, for example, has also been talking with the government about this. But there's also the private providers, the English language sector and the vet sector, which is suffering. And I think another something else the government needs to look at right now is targeted funding for the sector.
Yes, I didn't realise that our tertiary institutions mostly are just so reliant financially on international students. It didn't really occur to me until sort of all hell broke loose financially with their budgets in the last 12 months.
Yes, well, you're right, Andrew. I mean, I think COVID has obviously, like it has with so many issues, it's just highlighted the fact that there has been enormous reliance. I mean, I guess you could look at it as, the universities themselves have dealt with decreases, in funding over the last few years. They've then looked to other models. International students coming in, of course, have provided a means for them to make up for that funding. And I mean, they do charge a lot to international students. You're looking at $30,000 to $40,000 a year for, let's say, a 1 year, 2 year master degree. So yes, there has been a lot of reliance, that's for sure.
Yes, perhaps it's ended up a little too much, it seems. Suddenly it's gone and there's a lot of wobbling going on in the accounts department, a lot of tertiary institutions. Look, Melanie, it's lovely to talk to you and thank you very much for your take on it. It's lovely to have you on tonight. A pleasure.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks a lot.
Melanie Macfarlane, migration and international student expert, right here on 3AW. It's 8 to 9.